I will liken him unto a wise man which built his house upon a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. And every one who heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them not, shall be likened unto a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell. And great was the fall of it.
And we saw that Jesus tells us here the little story in Matthew chapter 7, verse 24 and 27. I want you to look at this passage this morning as we look about two builders who build two houses on two different types of foundations. And with these two different results that we see, one the house is collapsed and the other one stands. In the story of the two builders, Jesus teaches us about the foundation upon which we build our lives. And this is of great importance. And I want you to notice some things here today with me as we look at a solid foundation for life. I want to do a modern retelling of this story, and I want you to listen along with it. Hopefully it helps you understand it a little bit more. There were these two guys who set out to build a house in Jerusalem. One was named Peter and the other was named Judas. Both of these guys were very successful businessmen. Peter owned his own fishing business and Judas was a bank president. Both of these men were known to be God-fearing men. These guys went to several of the master carpenters' seminaries in Galilee. Both of these guys were building a new house in pretty close to the same location near the Jerusalem Country Club. They had chosen the same house design. Both they picked from Lowe's in Jerusalem. Now, Peter listened to the master builder who had told him, "You must build on the bedrock." So Peter made his foundation on the bedrock because he believed he must do what the master had told him. So Judas heard the same message that Peter did. But he did not believe the master builder had said you must build on the bedrock. So Judas decided he would do it his own way and not build on the rock like the master had told him. Judas figured that if he did this, not building on this bedrock, well, he could save some serious money. So one evening a big storm came. Peter and Judas's house were both hit by the same terrible storm. Peter and his family escaped as the heavy rain caused the water in the pond at the Jerusalem Country Club to flood their houses. The winds blew and suddenly Judas's house floated away. And as it was floating away, it finally collapsed on the seventh hole. You see, Judas's house had failed because it was not built on the rock. Peter's house stood through the wind and the rain and the flooding because it was built on the rock, the bedrock, Jesus Christ. In this retelling I just did, I hope you see some interesting things. You know, for a long time I always believed that the story was about a lost individual who was building his house upon, well, upon things of life. Where, of course, the guy who was building the house upon the rock was building his house upon Jesus Christ. But we see something interesting here. These two types of people had several similarities and important characteristics in common. Even though they had several things in common, they are still two different types of people. The two people Jesus pictures here have several important things, and we're going to look at them. And first of all, they were both building a house. They were both building a house, and that's what I put up there. They were both building a house. I referenced back to verse 24. It says, "Anyone who listens to my teaching and follows is like wise, like a person who builds a house upon a rock." We see later on that there is a guy who's building a house upon the sand. So they're both building, but one is building on the understanding of Jesus Christ. Now, this house is a visual representation of your life. The house is a representation of your life. They are an image of a person's life. That is, each person has built a life based on how they understand the message of Jesus. It's based on how you understand it. But this makes application very important. Makes it of greatest importance. This means that both people believe the message of Jesus to a certain point, but that each applied the words of Jesus to their own life as each saw fit. So this brings me to my next point, and I hope you see it, is it comes from verse 27. They were both building in the same general location. Now, you may not hear that, and Jesus doesn't come out and say that, but when you understand the storm that comes and hits them, well, it's the same storm that hits the house that's built on the rock, and it's the same storm the house that's built on the sand. So we have to have the general understanding is that these buildings are in the same location. They're in a pretty close location. It also describes a very serious storm. But they were building in the same location, and this storm affects both of these houses. So they must have been built pretty close to one another, right? I think this is very interesting because for us, it has application today, is that we see that these are types of people that are here on earth. You see, we are in the same location all the other humans are. They are located here on earth. And yeah, guess what? We face storms in life just like somebody else does. We're all in that same general vicinity of life. So, we have to look for another similarity. And I think they were building similar houses. They were. They were both building similar houses. And we see this, and I want you to think about this. Both of them were building houses. So let's take a second and think about houses. Houses have roofs, right? Houses have a roof. Houses have walls. Houses have windows. And some houses have a lot of windows. Some houses have big windows. They all have windows. Some houses have doors. All houses have doors, right? If you don't have a door, you can't get inside. So they have doors. So we get this understanding is the houses all appear to be the same. Now, some may be different colored. Some may have a brick facade. Some may have, stucco that's on them. But they all have these walls. They all have the windows. They all have doors. But here's the thing. Some have different color, right? Well, the human race has different colors, right? Yeah. But we're all made generally in the same, right? We're made in the image of God. These houses are all made the same. It's just the colors. And some have beautiful... I know Margaret likes the shutters on houses, right? She notices that. She notices the colors of the doors. I always look at doors at practicality. I don't look at them for beauty. But now for the ladies, they have a different view for that. But this is the thing. God wanted us to see in this story is that these houses they appeared to be the same. They appeared to be the same. Our house is very similar to the house next door. We have roofs. We have the doors. We have a porch. They have a porch maybe not as big as ours, but they do. The picture is how people respond in difference to the message of the gospel. some people hear the message and they react in different ways. Regardless of how a person may react to the gospel, they will all build their lives based on what they think Jesus is saying. You see, these people all build their house in the same location, and that is the weather. They weather the same storm. Guess what? They probably work in similar jobs. They do the same things. They go to the same churches. They hear the same preaching. And they live the same kinds of life. That is from the outside. You really can't tell much difference between the two hearers. Both of them seem to live the same kind of lives. They have a lot in common on the outside. While there are several similarities, guess what? There are some major differences between these two people. And we got to look at these differences. I've given you 3 similarities. These are 3 things that are very similar. But we have to come back, and I want you to look at verse 26. This is what we're going to look at next. It's verse 26. It says, "But anyone who hears my teaching and ignores it is foolish, like a person who builds a house on the sand." So, what we see is this one person builds this house with very little preparation. They found the spot for the house and they began building it. Now, here's the thing about building on sand. Sand is very unstable. It is very unstable. Sand offers no stability at all. It makes me think of my experience. I think Miranda remembers that we stayed at a beach house called Fort Black. Every time high tide came in, the beachfront house, it shook. So you knew when high tide was coming in because you thought you were going to roll out of the bed. We see that building upon sand is very unstable. Even those that build those beachfront houses, they put them on the large poles, the pylons, and they put them things probably 20 to 30 some feet deep, at least until you hit some rock. So, for most times, sand is probably not a prime place to build a house, because it never provides a firm foundation.